and then we'll see if this is a better fit. So sorry. Excited to hear what you have to share.
There you go. That's perfect.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. This is a topic broadly and narrowly that is near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, well, I know for me, this whole concept of this GLP-1, I think as somebody, I kind of understand it a little bit, but I really don't. So I would love to hear from your perspective, what are they? What is the hype? And what does it mean for consumers right now?
Okay, so a GLP-1 agonist is well, I'm not going to use drug names, but we've all heard about them, the shots that you lose weight, just like that, right? They are approved for type 2 diabetes and obesity, but they are not approved by the FDA for casual weight loss. So technically they're being used off-label, and nothing is wrong with off-label use because we use drugs off-label all the time, and that's okay. However, when you hear a lot of hype, my spidey senses radar goes way up. Like, okay, what is going on here? A GLP-1 triggers insulin release from the pancreas. Okay, insulin puts glucose into the cells, which are then used for energy. If glucose isn't going into the cells, then blood sugar goes up, right? Okay. GLP-1s also block glucagon secretion, and glucagon is a hormone that the body uses to raise blood sugar levels when necessary. So it keeps it down that way too. It also slows digestion down, making you feel less like eating. Now, as you can imagine, slowing digestion down, and we'll come back around to this later, is not a great thing in terms of health, of what happens to the body over time.
Right. Oh my goodness. Right.
GLP-1s cannot work by themselves. They cannot be successful by themselves without some lifestyle modification and nutrition strategies involved. You might lose some weight at first, but ultimately it will be minimally effective.
So basically, it seems like what I've heard is kind of like when you start using this as a method, it's really hard. It's like you have to stay on it for it to be effective. Is that an accurate?
Yeah. And from what I've seen and read is if you don't stay on it, you just gain back what you've lost. And it's an expensive proposition as well.
Yeah. Like you're on the merry-go-round, right? When you think you're about to get off, and then no, that's not.
Well, and I always find where people's priorities are kind of financially interesting because some of these things are costing like $1,000, $1,200 a month, and you can do a lot with that money, right? You can do a gym membership, healthy supplements, coaching. You can even get counseling because a lot of this there are deep emotional ties going on too. So, and those all address root causes as opposed to fixing the symptom of the actual problem, right?
Yeah.
So it's
interesting, like in like the weight loss span. If I think about, the last 30, 40 years, see, there's always something, right, that comes from big pharma. So yeah.
There is. And, having been a pharmacist since 91, I've seen several weight loss trends come through, both prescription and non-prescription. The prescription ones, I've seen a couple, well, actually a handful that have come through and then been pulled off the market. There's actually been 25 weight loss medications pulled off the market in about the last 40 years. Wow. And some of those have caused some very significant health problems and ended up in lawsuits too. Yeah. And again, some of those were off-label uses where the studies just weren't done, but people said, hey, this works, and just ran with it. So that's a problem. And I say this in love, and I've said it behind the counter. People come up to me all the time, is like, does this weight loss drug work? And my from the heart answer to that is, if there was a weight loss drug that actually worked long term, there would not be any people suffering with weight issues.
Right. Yeah.
And it's just the truth. I mean, it's always going to come back around to diet, lifestyle, sleep, emotional, and spiritual health.
Yeah, exactly.
Always going to come back to that.
So as a pharmacist too, do you feel like people are being told the risks with this, well, with many different drugs, right? But I mean, especially right now, like I know when I shared, about this call, the messages that I got from people that had friends that have had significant health issues, having to have their gallbladder removed, significant digestive issues that will not be reversible. I was in shock.
Yeah, that's true. And that's a big concern for me, because I'm a huge believer in informed consent. And informed consent is something, I'm gonna pull the definition medically and just read it verbatim. Great. It says, the process in which a healthcare professional educates a patient about risks, benefits, and alternatives of a given procedure or intervention. And that does not mean the commercial where you get the auctioneer voice at the very end and you can't keep up with what they just said. It doesn't mean that. It means equal time having a conversation and saying, risk versus benefit. Is this for you? And that is up to the individual. Like once they've heard all of that, it's certainly up to them, and it's on them to make the right choice for their best interest. But the risk versus benefit conversation is not happening. And I had one coaching client that got one shot, and literally the doctor said, hey, would you like to try this? And she was like, well, I don't know. I'm going to think about it. The doctor left the room, came back and said, here's your first shot. You want me to give it to you now? And she gave it to her right then and there in the office. And that was between our first and second coaching session. And it took months for her digestive system to come back around to that. So, you really, really do need to understand. And that kind of feeds into one of my major concerns with this particular product and the off-label use of it.
Yeah, share with us, because I think this is the piece that is often missing, right? The concern.
Yeah,
I would love to hear.
The concerns are a real thing. You do end up with elevated insulin levels in the body, which can lead to acute pancreatitis, which is no laughing matter if that happens. There's also an increased risk in developing medullary thyroid cancer within 12 to 36 months. There's gastroparesis, which is sometimes very hard to reverse. And that's really where the gut just shuts down. There's nausea, vomiting, the potential for nausea, vomiting, constipation, foul smelling, burping, because again, nothing's moving. It's sitting in the stomach. It has no place to go.
Yeah.
So it's going to come back up. A worsening or an accelerating of diabetic retinopathy. Okay. An increased risk of mood disorders like anxiety. This is because one of the ways these drugs work is the vagus nerve is downregulated. I mean, there are many of us who spend our time and our life constantly trying to help people upregulate their vagus nerve, not downregulate it, right? And you can do a lot of research on what the vagus nerve does, but that's part of the problem that we have throughout our society is downregulated vagus nerve. Acute gallbladder disease, which you had just mentioned, an increased heart rate is another one. And cosmetically, but not cosmetically, there's also something, and I'm gonna use the GLP instead of the word that's actually caused is GLP-1 butt or GLP-1 face. And this is because this particular drug has a tendency to dissolve lean body muscle. And so you end up with kind of a sunken face through here. That is identifiable. And you also start to lose a muscle mass, especially like in your glutes, which you need to be able to move properly and to get down off, if you're down on the floor, get up off the floor.
Especially as you age, right? This is
especially
especially for women, right? They are muscle.
And the effect that has also on your pelvic floor, which as women age, that also is another big issue too. So that's that those are concerns, and for somebody, if somebody was behind the counter handing a prescription, those are things that need to be addressed.
Right.
But
yeah. So I know for me personally, and just my own health journey, being empowered, right? That is such an amazing feeling. And I feel like really in today's society, there's often, I guess, a thought process of always looking to somebody else rather than empowering ourselves. And I know you and I are going to be on the same page with this, right? Of like, how can we actually help the body in a very effective way that will bring about muscles, right? And help your body digest properly. And all of these, like kind of what you mentioned, right? These lifestyle changes that seem to be like, nobody wants to do that, but it's so empowering when we really do, because they're so effective.
They are so effective. And as you reclaim or the person reclaims their body, that empowerment, you weren't leaning in on a shot or drops or something else. You were doing the work. And there's something to be said in like building a person and who that person is and who they are as God intended them to be. When you do the work, there's a sense of pride, there's a sense of confidence, and there's a sense of if I can do hard things, what else can I do?
Right. It's so empowering.
It's so empowering. And it's not about, well, if I just hit the easy button, then my problems will go away, because those problems are still like simmering. And if it's not going to come out in a weight issue or an inflammation issue, it will come out someplace else. Right. And so, it's better to, in my personal life, I feel like it's better to just grab the tiger by the tail and do the work, because it's just easy. It is easier in the long run. It seems hard at first, but it's just easier in the long run.
Right. Yeah. So I'm curious your thoughts on, all of these lifestyle changes. Like, what if somebody was coming in and doing health coaching, what are some of those lifestyle changes that you would address with them to try to?
Well, we always start with adequate nutrition, right? Leaning into proteins and healthy fats, which are, I'm a huge fan of butter. I'm a huge fan of Kerrygold butter or grass-fed butter for those of us that can get it, that kind of thing. I'm a huge fan of sleeping right, of keeping your, getting better understanding of your emotions and your spiritual health, your hydration, all of these things that just, they're simple tools, right? And I do love Ninja Red, for sure.
Right? I think, it's me too.
I know. That's why that is, that I would say that is one of our gateway drugs. And I have done so much studying on Ninja Red. I've bought textbooks on goji berries. I mean, it's like I'm the biggest nerd there ever was, I think, on my $200 textbook on goji berries.
Right? But it is fascinating, right? I mean,
it's just terribly fascinating.
Goji and wolfberries and type in any kind of like symptom, you will find so much research that is incredible.
especially if for those of us that really like to dive, and even if you don't like to dive, it's still just fun to do. Go into PubMed.gov or Google Scholar and start utilizing those. Just see what pops up, because those are all scientific studies, and they have some really interesting results there.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I was just sharing with somebody about this study that I had run across here. I'm trying to scroll to find it because I think we were going to chat really briefly here before we hopped off about how wolfberries, the Ningxia red, the wolfberries in there actually have a mild GLP-1 I guess means in it, right? There's an element. So do you want to touch on that, or do you want me to touch on it?
If you have it pulled up, you can go ahead and touch on it. I actually found that yesterday myself when I was reading a chart in the book that I have, and it made mention of that, and I was like, that is so interesting. So then I had to go do my own research again.
It's amazing. So I can put the study link in the chat when those of you are actually watching on the Zoom. But this actually was shared from a friend of mine, Wendy Mercure, who said they talked about the polyphenols in wolfberries and goji berries contain about 100 to 300 milligrams of polyphenols per 100 grams. Then it kind of talked about blueberries and the polyphenols that they have in that, and compared it to plums and different things. And not only does our Ningxia red have wolfberry, right? There are other fruits in this which even give it, more oomph behind it. But basically, it gave this information. It says, so I would estimate the polyphenol content of just 2 ounces of Ningxia red to be approximately 200 to 300 milligrams of polyphenols. This is within the beneficial range to show that it positively impacts fat cells and metabolism in studies using food-based polyphenols. So that, my friends, is huge. And so you can click on the link that I'll share in the chat for those watching the Zoom. But it literally is a powerhouse. And so why would we choose something that is not friendly to our body when we have something from nature?
Well, and I'll say this too, the traditional Chinese medicine has used the Ningxia or goji berries. They have used them for thousands of years medicinally. That's the thing. And it is without harm.
Right.
So what we have is kind of anecdotal data that does matter, because it's been used for thousands of years without harm, which is quite different from something that just, enters in the market all glittery and flashy and doesn't.
Right.
So,
yeah. Okay, great. Well, I think this has been super beneficial. Any last thoughts before we jump off here that you want to share?
No, other than I've been drinking Ningxia red for 11 years now. So
Right. And me too. And I'm having my little afternoon picnic here because it does the body good. So, All right. Thanks so much, Liz. This was so, so helpful.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.